On September 17, 2022, the sixth-ranked Oklahoma Sooners traveled to Lincoln, Nebraska. The Cornhuskers were a program in turmoil, having just fired the worst coach in their school history after a 16-31 record. The result was a brutal, clinical 49-14 Oklahoma victory. It was the most points the Sooners had ever scored in 43 all-time visits to Lincoln. Memorial Stadium, once one of the most imposing fortresses in sports, began emptying at halftime, despite honoring the 1970-71 national championship teams. This was not a rivalry. This was a painful confirmation of a new reality. The 2021-2022 series served as a final nostalgic eulogy. It was a reunion for fans to remember what was, and a definitive statement that, in the modern landscape of college football, it can never be that way again. How? How could this hollowed-out matchup, this ghost of a game, has once been considered the greatest game ever played? To understand what was lost, we first must understand what was built. The rivalry's beginning was humble. The first meeting took place on November 23, 1912 at Nebraska Field in Lincoln. Nebraska won 13-9. For the first 30 years, it was a regional affair, one that Nebraska largely dominated, holding a 16-3-3 record through 1942. But everything changed in 1947 with the hiring of Bud Wilkinson at Oklahoma. Wilkinson, at just 31 years old, transformed Oklahoma from a strong regional team into one of college football's first true dynasties. His achievements forged an empire. 3 national championships, the still unmatched 47-game major college winning streak from 1953 to 1957, and a seemingly impossible 74-game conference unbeaten streak. Wilkinson wasn't just a winner, he was an innovator. He pioneered the split T formation documented in his own book. He became the first football coach to host his own television show, and he partnered with Michigan State's Duffy Daugherty to sponsor nationwide clinics, effectively exporting the Oklahoma system across the country. This national dominance translated into absolute control of the rivalry. From 1943 to 1958, Oklahoma won 16 consecutive games against Nebraska. The scores were brutal: 55-7 in 1954, 41-0 in 1955, 54-6 in 1956. This was not a balanced feud. It was an annual exhibition of Oklahoma's dynastic power. Wilkinson's program set the national standard. The rivalry's identity was born from this profound imbalance. Oklahoma was the empire, and Nebraska was its perpetually frustrated northernmost subject. While Oklahoma was building a dynasty, Nebraska football reached rock bottom. From 1941 to 1961, Nebraska had the second most losses in all of college football, with 125. Their coach from 1957 to 1961, Bill Jennings, was ironically a Wilkinson protege. The program was irrelevant. Memorial Stadium sat half empty. Lincoln banks purchased ticket blocks and left them on counters for customers free of charge. The first crack in the armor came on Halloween 1959. Nebraska, a 2-4 team, hosted an Oklahoma program that had not lost a single conference game in Bud Wilkinson's 13-year tenure. Nebraska was a 14-17 point underdog in one of the biggest upsets in its history. Nebraska stunned the Sooners 25-21, ending the 74-game conference streak. Guard Lee Zentek returned a blocked punt 36 yards for a touchdown. Students stormed the field and tore down Memorial Stadium's goalposts for the first time in history. But this was a false dawn. That single victory did not solve Nebraska's deep systemic problems. The true big bang for the rivalry was the 1962 arrival of coach Bob Devaney. He wasn't the first choice, he was the fourth choice. After others declined, athletic director Tippy Dye turned to Wyoming's successful coach. It was Michigan State's Duffy Daugherty who made the crucial pitch. You can win a national championship at Nebraska, something Wyoming is unlikely to attain. In the September 13, 1971 edition of Sports Illustrated, John Underwood stated, Devaney was a smart, exceptionally quick-witted man. He could talk crop rotation with farmers and profit and loss with financiers, if their sons played football. The impact was instantaneous and historic. Devaney's first team in 1962 went 9-2. The transformation is captured in one staggering statistic. During the 20-year stretch from 1941 to 1961, Nebraska suffered the second most losses in the nation. After the arrival of the Bobfather, as he's referred to by Reverend Husker fans, Nebraska went on a 49-year stretch where they had the most wins in the nation. Much like Wilkinson, it shows what a difference one man can make. The breakthrough came in 1963. On November 23rd, the day after President Kennedy's assassination, one of only 6 games played nationally that day, Nebraska defeated number 6 Oklahoma 29-20 in Lincoln. For the first time, this game decided both the Big 8 championship and the Orange Bowl berth. The pattern was set. The lopsided series was about to become one of college football's most intense rivalries. The rivalry was elevated from a regional power struggle to a national legend on Thanksgiving Day 1971. The context was unprecedented. It was number 1 Nebraska, 10-0, versus number 2 Oklahoma, 9-0. The hype drew a record television audience of 55 to 60 million viewers. The Sports Illustrated cover famously billed it as Irresistible Oklahoma meets Immovable Nebraska. The stakes were absolute. The Big 8 championship, the consensus national championship, and the Heisman Trophy were all on the line. 17 of the 22 first-team All-Big 8 players were in this game. President Nixon was scheduled to call both coaches afterwards. The atmosphere was electric. Players vomited from nerves before kickoff. Nebraska even brought their own food to Norman, fearing Sooner sauce poisoning. The game unfolded like a 5-act epic. On the game's first punt, Nebraska's Johnny the Jet Rodgers fielded the ball at his 28, was hit, spun, and broke free. He famously eluded Oklahoma's Greg Pruitt, the first man to reach him, and raced 72 yards for a touchdown. The radio call from Nebraska legend Lyle Bremser echoed across the plains. Holy moly, man, woman, and child, did that put him in the aisles. Johnny the Jet Rodgers just tore him loose from their shoes. Oklahoma's irresistible Wishbone, which entered the game averaging a record 472 rushing yards, finally solved the immovable black shirts. The Sooners scored 14 unanswered points to take a 17-14 halftime lead, the first time Nebraska had trailed all season. The second half was a brutal back-and-forth trading of blows. After an Oklahoma touchdown, the Sooners led 31-28 with just 7:10 to play. Nebraska took over, 74 yards from a national title. This was the pipeline drive. It was saved on a 3rd and 8 from the 46 when quarterback Jerry Taggy scrambled right, evading a defender, and threw a diving 11-yard completion to Rodgers for a first down. From there, workhorse I-back Jeff Kinney carried the load. He plunged in from 2 yards out for his 4th touchdown of the day with 1:38 remaining. The Blackshirts, led by nose guard Rich Glover's legendary 22-tackle performance, made a final 4th down stop to seal the 35-31 victory. The aftermath was euphoric. 30,000 fans met the team on the runway at Lincoln Airport, so many the plane couldn't reach the gate. Nebraska went on to crush number 2 Alabama in the Orange Bowl to claim the national title. The Big 8 finished number 1, Nebraska, number 2 Oklahoma, and number 3 Colorado in the final AP poll, the only time in history one conference has held the top 3 spots. It's been called the game of the century. For those of you who were lucky enough to see it, I'd love to hear your memories of that day in the comments. And for those of you who didn't, what's the greatest game you've ever witnessed live? The rivalry was defined by a 20-year philosophical war between 2 ground-based offenses. It was a fundamental clash of how to run the ball. First was Switzer's Wishbone. This was the true triple option. It was a 4-back set with a quarterback, fullback, and 2 halfbacks in a Y formation. It was a horizontal attack designed to stretch the defense to the perimeter. The Wishbone's genius was its post-snap read system. The quarterback would execute a three-part option read. Read 1, read the defensive tackle. If he crashed, the quarterback kept the ball. If not, the quarterback gave the ball to the fullback on the dive. Read 2. If the tackle crashed on the fullback, the quarterback pulled the ball and attacked the defensive end. Read 3. If the end crashed on the quarterback pitched the ball to the trailing halfback. The key to the Wishbone? It didn't matter what decision you made, you would be wrong. Osborne's offense was a lesson in evolution. He embraced pro-style quarterbacks until the early 80s, then incorporated option into his attack. Is often mislabeled as a triple option offense, but it was not. It was a power option I formation. Its foundation was not the read of the option. It was brute force. It was an assault of attrition, where when you were convinced you had to do everything to stop the run, Osborne would hit you with play-action passing. The core plays were vertical. The isolation, ISO, where the fullback leads the I-back through the hole, the fullback trap, and the counter sweep. The option, which Osborne ran only 25 to 30% of the time, was a devastating complement to the power game. This tactical's arms race, where Nebraska learned from Oklahoma's option concepts, forced both programs to evolve. Behind the schematic war was an unseen arms race. In 1969, Nebraska hired Boyd Epley as the first full-time strength coach in college football history. The move was revolutionary. Tom Osborne recognized that injured players who trained with Epley returned stronger than they were before the injury. The Husker Power program was revolutionary sports science, focused on building explosive, agile power. It gave Nebraska a decade-long physical advantage, transforming 200-pound high schoolers into 250-pound college players. Epley's work was so foundational that he founded the National Strength and Conditioning Association in 1978, creating an entire profession that now employs over 55,000 certified coaches. The fact that Nebraska's strength coach literally invented the profession is one of those incredible details lost to history. We spend dozens of hours finding facts like this for every video. If you appreciate that level of deep dive research and believe this history deserves to be remembered, just take a second to hit the like button. It's free, and it tells the algorithm that real football history still matters. The rivalry's golden age from 1973 to 1988 was a 16-year chess match between two Hall of Fame coaches who were polar opposites. And Nebraska, Tom Osborne, was famously stoic. Holding a PhD in educational psychology, he was values-driven, the ultimate Boy Scout. He never talked about winning with players, focusing instead on execution and process. His approach produced an 84% graduation rate. At Oklahoma, Barry Switzer was charismatic, the riverboat gambler. His creed was shaped by a rough upbringing. If you're mine, I'm going to take care of your ass. Where others ran military-style programs, Switzer embraced individuality. He let Thomas Lott wear a bandana and Brian Bosworth have outrageous haircuts. Steve Smith in the Nebraska book Forever Read described the rivalry perfectly. In Tom Osborne, Nebraska had a soft-spoken coach who was a milk-drinking preacher's grandson. In Barry Switzer, Oklahoma had a slick-talking boss who was the offspring of bootleggers. Nebraska's style of play was staid and cerebral. Oklahoma's, with its speedy Wishbone, was a high-wire act, unparalleled in terms of entertainment value. Oklahoma had sex appeal. Nebraska, in a word, didn't. Head-to-head, Switzer held a 12-5 advantage. Yet their dynamic was not one of hatred. It was defined by a profound mutual respect. Osborne later admitted, "A lot of the memories weren't very good memories because he whipped us a lot of the times. We always had a good relationship. Oklahoma and Nebraska was never nasty. It was always a healthy rivalry, and our fan bases also kind of embraced that." Switzer reciprocated, speaking of Osborne's 1990s dominance. His 25 years, his record was unbelievable. His run was probably the greatest run in college football history. It was a 16-year war for a championship, fought by two opposing legends who respected each other's claim to the throne. This sibling rivalry was fueled by a conference structure that made the stakes absolute every single year. The Big 8 Conference was famously known as the Big 2 and the Little 6. The system was simple and brutal. The winner of the Nebraska-Oklahoma game won the Big 8 title around 28 times over a 30-year span. The Big 8 champion received the conference's automatic bid to the Orange Bowl. During this era, the Orange Bowl was the primary host for the national championship game. This late-season game was, in effect, a de facto national semifinal every year. The winner played for the title. The loser went home. This structure created moments of unbelievable triumph and devastating heartbreak. The heartbreak was never clearer than in 1978. Number 1 Oklahoma, led by Heisman favorite Billy Sims, traveled to number 4 Nebraska. Sims was brilliant, rushing for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he fumbled twice in the final 8 minutes. The last one was at the 3-yard line with 3 minutes and 27 seconds left as he fought for the end zone. Nebraska recovered. Nebraska won 17-14, single-handedly costing Oklahoma a perfect season and the national championship. In an unprecedented move, the Orange Bowl invited both teams for a rematch. Sims redeemed himself with 134 yards and 2 touchdowns in Oklahoma's 31-24 revenge victory. 1978 was Nebraska's first win after 7 losses to the Sooners. To say Osborne and everyone in the state of Nebraska was shocked that they had to play Oklahoma again in the Orange Bowl would be a massive understatement. 1986 was a classic. Number 3 Oklahoma, number 5 Nebraska. This game was the apex of Sooner magic. Nebraska led 17-10 with just over 2 minutes left, but Oklahoma, led by Jamel Holloway, mounted a final drive. The defining moment was a pass to tight end Keith Jackson, who made a miraculous one-handed sideline tightrope catch to set up the game-winning field goal. Oklahoma won 20-17, capturing the Big 8 title in the Orange Bowl berth. The 1987 Game of the Century II showed the rivalry's other side. For the first time since 1971, they met at number 1 versus number 2. This time, Nebraska was number 1. Nebraska got cocky. Quarterback Steve Taylor's trash talk was unprecedented. The flat-out truth is, Oklahoma can't play with us. It might not even be close, and I mean that. Oklahoma plastered those quotes all over their locker room. The result was total domination. Switzer's Wishbone offense shredded the Black Shirts for 419 rushing yards. Nebraska's top-ranked offense was held without a first down for 12 consecutive possessions. More than 25 minutes of game time. Oklahoma won 17-7, a definitive flex that secured the Orange Bowl. The rivalry's first and most mortal wound was a business decision. In 1996, the Big 8 merged with 4 teams from the Southwest Conference to create the Big 12. The move was the first time that a conference had joined together for the benefit of a media contract. To balance the new 12-team league, it was split into 2 divisions. Nebraska was placed in the north and Oklahoma in the south. The split was done so Oklahoma could maintain its rivalry with Texas and also its recruiting hotbeds in Texas. The annual Thanksgiving tradition was killed. It was played only twice every 4 years. The last annual meeting was a 37-0 Nebraska demolition in 1995. The very foundation of its identity was broken. If the Big 12's formation was the wound, Nebraska's 2010 departure for the Big 10 Conference was the definitive end. This must be understood not as an act of a betrayal against a rivalry, but as a proactive business decision for institutional survival. By 2010, the Big 12 was extremely unstable. Rumors swirled that Texas, Texas A&M, and even Oklahoma were being aggressively courted by the Pac-10 and the SEC. Furthermore, there was a strong perception among the other members that the conference was financially and structurally imbalanced in favor of the University of Texas. Texas refused to sign over their media rights to the conference, instead creating the Longhorn Network with ESPN in 2011. Nebraska's frustration with Texas wasn't just about favoritism. It crystallized in the 2009 Big 12 championship game. Nebraska, led by its defense, was leading Texas 12-10. Time expired. Nebraska's players stormed the field, but the officials reviewed the play and added 1 second back to the clock, allowing Texas to kick a game-winning 46-yard field goal to win 13-12. On June 11, 2010, Nebraska voted to leave for the Big Ten, seeking stability that the Big 12 cannot offer. The rivalry's final fitting act as a meaningful event came in the 2010 Big 12 championship game. In that last meeting as conference foes, Oklahoma won 23-20. The home-and-home series in 2021 and 2022 was not a revival. It was a nostalgia act. The 2021 game was explicitly scheduled to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 1971 game of the century. But as the 2022 blowout confirmed, an entire generation of fans has grown up without knowing this game as a battle of titans. The Nebraska-Oklahoma rivalry didn't die of natural causes. It was systematically dismantled. It was killed by the prioritization of television markets and conference revenue over history and tradition. What was lost was a rivalry built on mutual respect. It was, as Fox Sports noted, more like siblings than hate. The fan bases see themselves in each other. They enjoyed being the best in the country. They took pride in their rival being one of the best teams. In a 2021 article by ESPN about the reunion, Tom Osborne, the man who spent a career trying to conquer the Sooners, summarized what was unmade. Oklahoma was a great teacher for us because we had trouble beating them. Oklahoma made us better, and maybe in some ways we made them better too. For modern fans who never experienced annual Thanksgiving weekend showdowns deciding conference championships and national title paths, it's ancient history. A rivalry forgotten by time, unmade by forces prioritizing dollars over tradition. It is, as a 2008 Bleacher Report article stated, the greatest rivalry ever forgotten. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch our series on the foundation of American football. Go to our website and click on the timeline feature and select How Football Began. You'll learn how American football evolved from its earliest deadly form to the more modern form we love today.